Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India, India's voice to the world. My name is Mark Lynn. Coming up in the next hour. Mission Chandrayaan has become a symbol of the spirit of New India, says Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in his monthly Mann Ki Baat radio program. India's Prime Minister addresses the B20 Summit in New Delhi, chalks out the theme for Business 20.
It is about responsibility, acceleration, innovation, sustainability, and equality.
India's innovation and developments can solve 1/6 of all the world's problems, says External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar at the B20 Summit in New Delhi. And star javelin thrower Neeraj Chopra to vie for gold at the World Athletics Championship in Budapest in Hungary. DP Manu and Kishore Jaina are also in the fray. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the nation on Sunday in his monthly radio program Mann Ki Baat, and he touted the success of India's latest lunar mission Chandrayaan 3, which made a soft landing on the moon's south pole this week.
Chandrayaan is the symbol of the spirit of New India. That's how Indian Prime Minister has described India's successful lunar mission this week. Addressing the nation in his monthly radio program Mann Ki Baat, the Prime Minister recited a poem he dedicated to the success of India's Chandrayaan mission.
आसमान में सिर उठाकर, घने बादलों को चीरकर, रोशनी का संकल्प ले, अभी तो सूरज उगा है। दृढ़ निश्चय के साथ चलकर, हर मुश्किल को पार कर, घोर अंधेरे को मिटाने, अभी तो सूरज उगा है। आसमान में सर उठाकर, घने बादलों को चीरकर, अभी तो सूरज उगा है।
The Prime Minister highlighted the contribution of women in the success of Chandrayaan 3.
साथियों, इस मिशन का एक पक्ष ऐसा भी रहा जिसकी आज मैं आप सबके साथ विशेष तौर पर चर्चा करना चाहता हूं। आपको याद होगा, इस बार मैंने लाल किले से कहा है कि हमें विमेन लेड डेवलपमेंट को राष्ट्रीय चरित्र के रूप में सशक्त करना है। जहां महिला शक्ति का सामर्थ्य जुड़ जाता है, वहां असंभव को भी संभव बनाया जा सकता है। भारत का मिशन चंद्रयान नारी शक्ति का भी जीवंत उदाहरण है। इस पूरे मिशन में अनेकों विमेन साइंटिस्ट और इंजीनियर्स सीधे तौर पर जुड़ी रही हैं। इन्होंने अलग अलग सिस्टम्स के प्रोजेक्ट डायरेक्टर, प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजर, ऐसी कई अहम जिम्मेदारियां संभाली हैं। भारत की बेटियां अब अनंत समझे जाने वाले अंतरिक्ष को भी चुनौती दे रही हैं। किसी देश की बेटियां जब इतनी आकांक्षी हो जाए तो उसे, उस देश को विकसित बनने से भला कौन रोक सकता है?
The Prime Minister said that Chandrayaan's success is the success and progress of the 1.4 billion people of India.
साथियों, हमने इतनी ऊंची उड़ान इसलिए पूरी की है क्योंकि आज हमारे सपने भी बड़े हैं और हमारे प्रयास भी बड़े हैं। चंद्रयान 3 की सफलता में हमारे वैज्ञानिकों के साथ ही दूसरे सेक्टर्स की भी अहम भूमिका रही है। तमाम पार्ट्स और तकनीकी जरूरतों को पूरा करने में कितने ही देशवासियों ने योगदान दिया है। जब सबका प्रयास लगा तो सफलता भी मिली। यही चंद्रयान-3 की सबसे बड़ी सफलता है।
In a giant leap for India's space program, Chandrayaan-3 touched down on the lunar south pole on August 23, propelling the country to an exclusive club of 4 and making it the first country to land on the uncharted surface. Abhishek Bose for DD India.
And India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that the G20 has become more inclusive under India's presidency. Addressing the nation in Mann Ki Baat, he said that India is fully prepared for the G20 Leaders Summit scheduled to be held in New Delhi next month. DD India's Abhishek Bose has more.
The G20 Leaders Summit, scheduled to be held in India's capital New Delhi next month, will see the biggest participation in the history of the G20. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his monthly radio show Mann Ki Baat, emphasized the inclusivity of this year's summit under India's presidency.
G20 समिट के इतिहास में ये अब तक की सबसे बड़ी भागीदारी होगी। अपनी प्रेसिडेंसी के दौरान भारत ने G20 को और ज्यादा इंक्लूसिव फोरम बनाया है। भारत के निमंत्रण पर ही अफ्रीकन यूनियन भी G20 से जुड़ी और अफ्रीका के लोगों की आवाज दुनिया के इस अहम प्लेटफॉर्म तक पहुंची। साथियों, पिछले साल बाली में भारत को G20 की अध्यक्षता मिलने के बाद से अब तक इतना कुछ हुआ है जो हमें गर्व से भर देता है।
The Prime Minister said that the G20 meetings held across many cities in the country this year was a demonstration of India's vibrant democracy.
देश के 60 शहरों में इससे जुड़ी करीब 200 बैठकों का आयोजन किया गया। G20 डेलीगेट्स जहां भी गए वहां लोगों ने गर्मजोशी से उनका स्वागत किया। ये डेलीगेट्स हमारे देश की डायवर्सिटी देखकर, हमारी वाइब्रेंट डेमोक्रेसी देखकर बहुत ही प्रभावित हुए। उन्हें यह भी एहसास हुआ कि भारत में कितनी सारी संभावनाएं हैं।
The PM highlighted that India's G20 presidency is a people's presidency in which the spirit of public participation is at the forefront. The PM said during India's G20 presidency, the mantra vocal for local got a boost and also paved the way for local to become global.
G20 के जो 11 एंगेजमेंट ग्रुप्स थे उनमें एकेडेमिया, सिविल सोसाइटी, युवा, महिलाएं, हमारे सांसद, एंटरप्रेन्योर्स और अर्बन एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन से जुड़े लोगों ने अहम भूमिका निभाई। इसे लेकर देश भर में जो आयोजन हो रहे हैं उनसे किसी न किसी रूप से 1.5 करोड़ से अधिक लोग जुड़े हैं। जन भागीदारी की हमारी इस कोशिश में एक ही नहीं बल्कि दो विश्व रिकॉर्ड भी बन गए हैं। वाराणसी में हुई G20 क्विज में 800 स्कूलों के 1.25 लाख स्टूडेंट्स की भागीदारी एक नया विश्व रिकॉर्ड बन गया। वहीं लंबानी कारीगरों ने भी कमाल कर दिया। 450 कारीगरों ने करीब 1800 यूनिक पैचेज का आश्चर्यजनक कलेक्शन बनाकर अपने हुनर और क्राफ्ट्समैनशिप का परिचय दिया है।
The PM's radio show Mann Ki Baat started on October 3, 2014 and reached its 100th episode on April 30, 2023. This was the 104th edition of the show. Abhishek Bose, DD India.
In his monthly address, the Prime Minister also praised the remarkable achievement of India's athletes during the World University Games. He said that the country's youth are continuously achieving new success in the area of sports.
आज खेलकूद एक ऐसा क्षेत्र है जहां हमारे युवा निरंतर नई सफलताएं हासिल कर रहे हैं। मैं आज मन की बात में एक ऐसे टूर्नामेंट की बात करूंगा जहां हाल ही में हमारे खिलाड़ियों ने देश का परचम लहराया है। कुछ ही दिनों पहले चीन में वर्ल्ड यूनिवर्सिटी गेम्स हुए थे। इन खेलों में इस बार भारत की बेस्ट एवर परफॉर्मेंस रही है। हमारे खिलाड़ियों ने कुल 26 पदक जीते, जिनमें से 11 गोल्ड मेडल थे। आपको ये जानकर अच्छा लगेगा कि 1959 से लेकर अब तक जितने वर्ल्ड यूनिवर्सिटी गेम्स हुए हैं, उनमें जीते सभी मेडल्स को जोड़ दें तो भी ये संख्या 18 तक ही पहुंचती है। इतने दशकों में सिर्फ 18, जबकि इस बार हमारे खिलाड़ियों ने 26 मेडल जीत लिए।
And on the final day of the B20 Summit, India 2023, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that India was holding an important place in building an efficient and trusted global supply chain. The B20 Summit 2023 is based on the theme of the B20 India, which is RAISE, that stands for Responsible, Accelerated, Innovative, Sustainable, Equitable Businesses.
इस B20 समिट की थीम है रेस। इट इज अबाउट रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, एक्सेलरेशन, इनोवेशन, सस्टेनेबिलिटी एंड इक्वलिटी, एंड इट इज अबाउट ह्यूमैनिटी। इट इज अबाउट वन अर्थ, one family, one future.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar also addressed the B20 India Summit 2023. The Business 20 is the official G20 dialogue forum with global business leaders, and the minister said that the core mandate of the G20 is to promote economic growth, and that can only happen when crucial concerns of the global south are addressed.
It is the working of this multiple axis in tandem that is now forging a new India. An India that creates its own 5G stack, an India which invents its COVID vaccine, or an India that lands near the south pole of the moon. So when you reflect on it, the discourse about the global south is essentially about leaving no one behind. But to preach it convincingly, one has to practice it effectively. And that is what India has sought to do over the last decade.
And we are privileged to have with us Ambassador Mohan Kumar, former senior diplomat, who's a renowned expert on geoeconomics, with us. Dr. Mohan Kumar, what is the inherent strength of the global south?
Oh, I think the External Affairs Minister hit the right notes. But if you ask me what is the importance of the global south, I would say, first of all, the market and all the population increases, the development, everything is going to happen in the global south in the next 20 years. So the future in many ways belongs to the global south. The past belonged to the north. But I think the issue is we are at a tipping point in the world where I think the global south is really emerging also in terms of producing global solutions. So from being a mere consumer, I think we are on the verge of becoming a major producer. A producer not just of ideas, but a producer of goods, producer of services, producers of technical knowledge. And I think India leads the way, whether in terms of UPI, whether in terms of the CoWIN platform, etc. As the External Affairs Minister said, if India can take care of itself, it not only takes care of 1/6 of the world's population, but because of the replicability of India's solutions to the global south, I think the global south stands to benefit. So in many ways, Mark, I would answer you by saying you cannot ignore the global south. You do so at your peril. So it's a very strong message, not just to the north, but also to other great powers like China and those who have a membership of the UN Security Council, those who call the shots, if you like. So I would say that there is a very, very strong message for the rest of the countries not to ignore Global South.
Indeed, and you've also mentioned that India is clearly a beacon in terms of tapping economic potential. India is focused on the right priorities, but India continues to be a growth engine. It needs investments. At a time like this, the Prime Minister also said, you should be with India if you want to grow yourself.
No, I think I'm very clear in my mind that if India continues to grow and grow at the way we are growing, we will definitely provide the market of the future, and I don't think you need to beg for attention. The world will come to you. There's no question about it. I think we need to get our act together, which we are doing. And I think the point is we need to tell the other countries of the G20 that, listen, the Global South is not represented in the G20. We are trying, India is trying our best to be the voice of the Global South. And as the Prime Minister said, and I'm seeing your sticker, Global South concerns cannot be ignored anymore. Right. So that's, I think, the tipping point that we have reached. In many ways, I would like to dub or label this G20 summit as a G20 summit for the Global South. You can also say it is a people's G20, but that is more internal to India. I would say that this is, in all the G20 summits that I have tracked, I have not seen a G20 summit more talk of Global South, discuss the problems of the Global South. And I think three things that we have done, if you allow me, are absolutely path-breaking. First, we had the Voice of the Global South Summit in January 2023. I thought that was a master stroke, calling 125 countries to kind of express their concerns and priorities and problems. Second, we've argued in favor of the African Union joining the G20, which again is, I think, a good move geopolitically. It's smart. Africa has 53 countries. Africa is going to have 2 billion people in the next 20 years. It now equals the population of India, but in the next 20 years, it will double its population. So you really cannot ignore Africa. And last but not least, as the Prime Minister said, the maximum number of invitees. I was quite struck that 40 invitees other than the G20, it actually makes it a global forum, if you like. It's no longer this exclusive club. And that will be my last point to you. The question is how to make G20 less of an exclusive club and more to respond to the concerns, the genuine concerns of G20. I think India's presidency has taken this to a completely different level.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Mohan Kumar, for joining us and enlightening us on that subject. Still to come here on DD India News Hour. The situation in Niger deteriorates as the junta puts its forces on high alert. Also, drone hits a multi-story apartment building in southern Russia near the border with Ukraine.
Your name, Ina Krishnamurthy,
Yes.
it sounds so much like an Indian name.
My grandfather fascinated with Mahabharata, Ramayana stories, so he gave my father's name Krishnamurthy.
The handing over of the gavel by Indonesian President in Bali to Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
Of course, it's a fascinating, memorable history.
What does Indonesia think is the biggest challenge in the Indo-Pacific?
We don't want this region to be part of any conflict, not unilateral actions.
How does Indonesia see the Quad partnership?
We see it as a plus.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Russia says that its forces shot down 2 drones in the Bryansk and Kursk region bordering Ukraine. The governor of the Kiev region, Ruslan Kravchenko, says that two people have been wounded and 10 buildings damaged by the falling missile debris. And crowds of people have rallied in the German city of Dusseldorf. They are angry about weapons being delivered to Ukraine and what they say is an economic war against Russia. The protesters held banners and placards demanding the United States and other Western countries immediately stop sending weapons to Kiev, also denouncing NATO. A detachment of Russia's Navy warships returned from more than 3 weeks of joint patrolling of the Pacific Ocean with Chinese Navy ships. According to Russian Interfax news agency, warships of Russia's Pacific Fleet, together with a detachment of Chinese Navy ships, traveled more than 7,000 nautical miles through the Sea of Japan, the Sea of Okhotsk, and the Bering Strait, and the Pacific Ocean. During the patrol, the Russian-Chinese detachment passed along the Kuril Ridge. And Dasha Chernyshova joins us from Moscow with more on these stories. Dasha, what are people to make of the joint patrolling of the Russian and Chinese naval ships close to the state of Alaska and the United States?
Well, as we have heard, the partnership between Moscow and Beijing goes without limits, and certainly this is part of this increased cooperation between the two countries. We understand that the cooperation between Moscow and Beijing is not targeting anyone, it's not targeting the third countries, but benefits the two nations. So we have heard before the Russian officials and the Chinese officials all saying that they will continue to beef up their cooperation in all spheres, including in the military one. Geopolitically, of course, this is sending a very strong message globally, particularly to the United States and the Western countries that have been accused by both Beijing and Moscow of their hostile policies towards Moscow and Beijing, that these two countries are there to stand for their goals and to stand for their national interests. So certainly Russia has been saying that those drills will intensify and that Moscow and Beijing are both benefiting from that.
Dasha, also, how is Moscow looking at reports of protests in Germany? We played out one of those stories, reports of protests in Germany against NATO's support for Ukraine.
Well, for months now, we've heard Moscow insisting that the supplies of weapons to Ukraine only extend the duration of the so-called special military operation in Ukraine. So Moscow has been very clearly sending a message to the Western countries and actually writing a note to the NATO countries as well as other Western nations supplying weapons to Ukraine to stop that. Because from Moscow's perspective, it is the supplies of weapons to Ukraine that does not encourage urge Kyiv to get back to the negotiating table. Just to remind you, the latest round of negotiations that the two delegations have had was held in spring 2022 in Istanbul. And following that round, Russia has been saying that there was the document on the table. The sides have been exchanging this document, but it has never been finalized. Moscow says because of the unwillingness of Kyiv, because of the continuous supplies of weapons from the West. So certainly these demonstrations will be commented on by the Russian officials as part of the growing understanding that the Western countries are fueling that conflict.
Indeed. Thanks very much, Dasha, for joining us. Now to Zimbabwe, where the incumbent president Emerson Mnangagwa has been re-elected for a second and final term. The re-elected president has suggested on Sunday that those people questioning the result of last week's election, which an opposition leader dismissed as a gigantic fraud, take their case to court. Mnangagwa won the election 52.6% of the vote to 44% of the opposition leader Nelson Chamisa. Now, the election was due to be held last Wednesday, but voting was extended to Thursday after delays and problems with the printing of ballot papers. Mnangagwa's ZANU-PF party has been in power for more than 4 decades. Well, a 48-hour ultimatum given to France's ambassador to Niger by the country's military rulers on Friday is about to expire. Since seizing control of the government on July 26th, Niamey's new regime has been at loggerheads with several Western powers and the region's bloc. ECOWAS, that is, and DD India correspondent Isaac Lucando has reported from Dar es Salaam. Let's listen.
The clock is ticking for Sylvain Ité, French ambassador to Niger. Apart from his impending departure, his country's influence in the West African nation is also on the line. In recent weeks, there has been growing opposition to the presence of around 1,500 French soldiers stationed there. The soldiers had been helping ousted President Mohamed Bazoum fight a growing jihadist insurgency. Amid growing anti-French sentiment, Niger's foreign ministry has now asked France's representative to leave. However, French authorities remain defiant against the military junta that ordered the diplomat's expulsion. The French Foreign Ministry maintains that only a democratically elected government would have the authority to remove their ambassador. This latest development follows a threat of military action by French-backed regional bloc ECOWAS if last month's coup is not reversed. The bloc, which has rejected a plan to return to civilian rule in 3 years, says military intervention is still an option. But analysts note that any use of military force in Niger is risky and likely to further destabilize one of the poorest nations in the world. Isaac Lucando in Dar es Salaam, reporting for DD India.
Since seizing control of the government on the 26th of July, Niamey's new regime has been at loggerheads with several Western powers and the region's economic bloc, ECOWAS. Meanwhile, supporters of Niger's military leaders flooded the country's national stadium to celebrate 1 month of the military rule and to call for a swift expulsion of the French ambassador. And still to come on DD India News Hour. The Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva says that the UN Security Council needs changes. Thousands of Israeli protesters in Tel Aviv continue their protests against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's planned judicial overhaul.
Welcome to Chandigarh.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Here's a recap of the headlines. Mission Chandrayaan has become a symbol of the spirit of New India, says Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in his monthly Mann Ki Baat radio program. India's Prime Minister addresses the B20 Summit in New Delhi and chalks out the theme for Business 20. And the star javelin thrower Neeraj Chopra to vie for gold at the World Athletics Championship in Budapest, Hungary. DP Manu and Kishore Jain are also in the fray. India has handed over the B20 presidency to Brazil, the host of the G20 next year. The presidency was handed over on the last day of the three-day B20 India Summit 2023 in New Delhi on Sunday.
I'd like to now request the B20 Summit Secretariat, Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, to now hand over the plaque to Brazil.
For years, restaurants and food vendors in Tanzania's commercial street of Dar es Salaam have been serving Indian food. The phenomenon has helped propagate Indian culture in East Africa. DD India's Daniel Kijo has this report.
At a fancy restaurant in Dar es Salaam, a taste of India comes to life. For years, Indian cuisine has enjoyed undying popularity among locals and visitors. As a result, some of the city's residents are able to run a thriving business.
We are constantly maintaining because we have the standardization of recipes. So that makes our products you eat today, or if you're eating 3 years back, also you will feel the same taste.
Known for its aromatic curries and creamy coconut milk-based dishes, Indian cuisine draws many adoring fans.
Very flavorful at all times. Like, I've never had a bad moment with Indian food. The restaurants themselves are very welcoming, very nice people, so yeah.
Because of its prevalence in Swahili culture, Indian food is often referred as Swahili food in East Africa. During the colonial era, traders and settlers from India brought their food with them to East Africa. Indian culture has since influenced the region.
Whether it's fine dining in a fancy restaurant or delicious street meals downtown, Dar es Salaam does not disappoint. Be it sweet, spicy or savory, you can find something in almost any part of the city.
Palak Patel, an aspiring food blogger and business owner, says decades of experimentation by cooks in the region have aided the evolution of Indian cuisine.
We have the chicken tikka masalas, we have the butter chickens, we have the jira chickens, we have the naans, and we have the paneers and all of those things. But they've got a special twist to it because of the spices that are used. And I think that is what differentiates us with everything else.
Innovative ideas appear to be keeping Indian culinary traditions alive in East Africa. With each bite, the region's people continue to connect with the culture of the Indian subcontinent thousands of miles away. Daniel Kijo in Dar es Salaam reporting for DD India.
Well, Sri Lanka hosted the very first Karnataka Cultural Festival organized by the International Cultural Council of India in collaboration with Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center and the ME Global Peace Foundation. This cultural event showcased a mesmerizing performance by over 30 artists from Karnataka, including dances, folk songs, and captivating puppet shows. The event celebrated the cultural diversity and marked a significant moment in the shared cultural heritage of India and Sri Lanka. The Brazilian President, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, is calling for change within the United Nations Security Council, criticizing the current UN Security Council members. Brazilian President wants reforms in the international body, urging more inclusiveness for countries other than those present in the Security Council.
The United Nations in 2023 is far from having the same credibility of the UN in 1945. The Security Council, which should be a figure of peace and calm, is a Security Council that is doing war without talking to anyone. Russia goes to Ukraine without discussing the Security Council. The United States went to Iraq without discussing the Security Council. France and England invaded Libya without passing through the Security Council. This is, the ones who go to war are the countries members of the Security Council. The ones making guns are the countries of the Security Council. The ones selling guns are the countries of the Security Council. That's wrong. We need to understand that we need more countries in the Security Council.
Some plain speaking there by Lula da Silva. Mass demonstrations are continuing in Israel against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his government's judicial overhaul. Saturday marked the 34th straight week of protests, with more than 100,000 people, in fact, gathering in Tel Aviv, calling for reforms to be scrapped. Protesters say that the proposed changes would significantly weaken the power of the Supreme Court and give the far right-wing government too much power. In Haiti, fleeing gang violence, residents of Carrefour-Fier neighborhood of Port-au-Prince abandoned their homes and set up a camp in a local gymnasium. At least 7 people were killed in Haiti on Saturday. This is according to local rights group CARDE. Despite not having enough tents, no food for everyone, displacement victims say that returning to their homes was not an option. Gangs who are strong there, they control vast portions of the country, and they are to blame for acute food shortages, murders, kidnappings, as well as the pervasive sexual violence in Haiti. The UN estimates that at least 2,439 people have died, and about 200,000 have been internally displaced since the beginning of this year. The number of foreign-born workers in the United States has reached a record high, and that's according to data from the U.S. labor market. Last year, people born outside the United States made up 18.1% of the overall labor force. That's the highest level since 1996. And Indians represent the second largest immigrant group in the United States after the Mexicans and contribute billions of dollars to the U.S. economy. Sally Peterson has more from New York.
Spectrum analyzer basically sees if there's energy, what the energy is at different frequencies. And
for decades, Indian migrants have been building the infrastructure needed to power the US economy. At this laboratory in Brooklyn, engineers are designing solutions to some of society's most pressing challenges using wireless technologies, from making smartphones smarter to modernizing medical equipment. The Indian labor force is more proficient in English, earns better salaries, and has higher education levels than other immigrant groups in the US.
Many of them had an excellent education, and so they could immediately plug into the American economy, especially in STEM, but in other areas as well, and help the process of pushing their respective fields, whether it's medicine, engineering, and you'll see them overrepresented there.
But it's not just the sciences. Indian immigrants have helped bolster American industries, including the arts, retail, and manufacturing, while, of course, keeping everyone well fed.
Let's not forget the political realm. And I think that's been an area where we've seen a number of changes over just the past few years, where there's really a movement across the country to elevate more people of Indian origin into positions of political power. And I think a lot changed for the Indian community when Kamala Harris became the vice president, because as we now know, she is the daughter of two former international students, one of whom was from India. Her mother was from India and her father was from Jamaica.
International students were on the agenda when US President Joe Biden welcomed India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the White House in June. With Indians on track to become the country's largest foreign student group, the leaders committed to strong ties in higher education and research partnerships. The Biden administration also pledged to make it easier for Indians to live and work in the US, something the nation has relied on throughout its history.
A couple of centuries ago, there were Indian immigrants who came to the US to build our railroads. But then there was a drop in Indian immigration. But just focusing on what's happened since the 1960s, which was the last time that there was comprehensive immigration reform in the US, most Indians have come through the pathway of what we might call skilled immigration in the US.
But advocates stress the flow of labourers is only possible if mechanisms for entry are in place, such as streamlining the H-1B visa process, which is being trialled in a pilot project. From scientific breakthroughs to cutting-edge technology, Indian immigrants have made a colossal contribution to the US economy, generating innovative solutions for generations to come. Sally Patterson in New York, reporting for DD India.
Now, 3 people have been shot dead in Jacksonville, Florida, with police describing the incident as racially motivated. The local sheriff says that the gunman was a white male wearing a tactical vest. He shot and killed himself after the incident. Authorities have identified the victims as 2 men and a woman who were black. It's understood that the shooter acted alone, writing several manifestos detailing his hatred for black people. Police say the perpetrator used the Glock and an AR-15 style rifle with swastikas on it.
Jacksonville has suffered the loss of 3 precious lives at the hands of an active shooter. This afternoon, a little after 1 p.m., an individual we have not yet officially identified entered a Dollar Tree in the Newtown area of Jacksonville, outfitted with a tactical vest, armed with an AR-style rifle and a handgun. Then the shooter killed 3 people before turning the gun on himself, taking his own life.
And moving on to Asia, Japan says that tests of seawater near the Fukushima nuclear power plant have not detected any radioactivity days after the discharge of treated water from nuclear reactors. Water from the Fukushima plant was released into the Pacific Ocean on Thursday, sparking protests from neighboring countries, with some banning seafood from Japan. Its Environment Ministry says that the tests of samples taken from 11 points near the plant show that concentrations of radioactive isotope tritium are below the lower limit of detection, adding that the seawater would have no adverse impact on human health and the environment. The ministry will publish test results weekly for the next 3 months and will then review the timing of further releases. Meanwhile, voices against Japan's water dumping are growing louder in South Korea. Over 10,000 protesters gathered in downtown Seoul as the country's main opposition Minju party held a rally condemning Japan's discharge. Hundreds of people also marched in Fiji's capital Suva, calling out the Japanese government for its nuclear-contaminated water release. The drought-hit Panama Canal will maintain restrictions on the passage of ships for 1 year. This measure has already started and has led to marine traffic jams that have been caused, and ships have been lining up to enter the waterway. But the canal is facing a shortage of rainwater needed for the transport of ships through the water passage. Each ship moving through the Panama Canal requires about 200 million liters of fresh water to move it through the locks. The fresh water is provided by 2 artificial lakes fed by rainwater, and the lakes also supply drinking water to half of the country of about 4.2 million people. The former U.S. President Donald Trump has raised almost $20 million in the past 3 weeks as he chases another term in office. Since his arraignment and having his mugshot taken in Georgia, the former president has reportedly brought in more than $7 million, largely from the sales of merchandise. Mr. Trump is currently facing 4 indictments over election fraud and the January 6 attack by his followers on the U.S. Capitol in Washington. Tens of thousands of people marched to the Lincoln Memorial in the U.S.'s capital to commemorate the 60th anniversary of Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech.
Thousands of Americans marched through the streets of Washington on Saturday for the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington, a pivotal event in the 1960s U.S. Civil Rights Movement at which Martin Luther King Jr. gave his infamous I Have a Dream speech. Activists spoke at the Lincoln Memorial, the backdrop to King's impassioned call for equity, stressing that more work needs to be done amid the current political climate. Civil rights activist Al Sharpton.
60 years ago, Martin Luther King talked about a dream. 60 years later, we're the dreamers. The problem is we're facing the schemers. It's the streamers on one side, the schemers on the other. The dreamers are fighting for voting rights. The schemers are changing voter regulations in states. The dreamers are standing up for women's right to choose. The schemers are arguing whether they're going to make you stop at 6 weeks or 15 weeks.
Martin Luther King III, son of MLK, also spoke at the rally.
But I want to let you know how I'm feeling today. Because I'm very concerned about the direction our country is going in. And it is because instead of moving forward, it feels as if we're moving backward. The question is, what are we going to do?
Rally participant Yvonne Clifton Young shared a similar sentiment.
We move forward just as much as we move back. In what sense, you know, you feel like you've accomplished something, but there's always someone there to remind you where you came from. And that is the moving forward and that step back. Because some people don't want you to move.
More than 250,000 people joined the 1963 march as they pushed for an end to discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris will meet with march organizers on Monday to mark the 1963 meeting between organizers of the original march and the administration of President John F. Kennedy.
Still to come here on DD India News Hour. The ICC World Cup trophy is in Uganda and India will host the 45 days long event at 10 locations. All eyes on Neeraj Chopra as he hunts for gold at the World Athletics Championship.
Welcome to a happy place. To nature's warm embrace. Witness the power of faith. Fruits of hard work and protectors of Mother Earth. Unique in every way. Discover something new every day. a small state with big ambitions and a bigger heart. Mizoram welcomes to love, laughter and celebrations.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. The ICC Men's One-Day International World Cup inches closer. Hosts India campaign will start on the 8th of October in Chennai against Australia, and the final will take place at the Narendra Modi Stadium in Gujarat. The ICC World Cup trophy is currently in Uganda, and India is going to host this 45-day event at 10 different locations.
The ICC Men's Cricket World Cup 2023 will begin on October 5th as England will face New Zealand in the opening match. India will host the 45 days long event at 10 locations. The showcase tournament will feature a total of 10 teams. The top 4 teams advance to the knockout stage and semi-finals after each team plays the other 9 teams in a round-robin style. Hosts India's campaign will get underway on October 8th in Chennai against the 5-time World Cup champions Australia. Key fixtures. Apart from the cracking opening encounter and India's face-off with 2019 semi-finalists Australia, the tournament is filled with a host of crucial clashes. The much-anticipated India-Pakistan clash is scheduled for Sunday, October 15th in Ahmedabad. Their last encounter in the 2019 World Cup was a high-scoring affair, with India achieving a huge victory in Manchester. Pakistan will face Australia in Bengaluru on October 20, while England clash against South Africa the next day in Mumbai. Australia face their arch-rivals England on November 4th in Ahmedabad. Knockout stages. The first semi-final will be held on Wednesday, November 15th in Mumbai, and the second semi-final will be held the following day in Kolkata. Both semi-finals will have a reserve day. The final will take place at the Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad on November 19th, with November 20 slated as the reserve day. All 3 knockout fixtures will be day-night affairs. Tournament venues. There will be a total of 10 venues across the country for the World Cup. Guwahati and Thiruvananthapuram, in addition to Hyderabad, will host the warm-up matches from September 29 to October 3rd. Guwahati will be hosting a World Cup warm-up match for the first time, giving a boost to India's Act East policy, an effort by the Government of India to cultivate extensive economic and strategic relations with Southeast Asia. A total of 10 venues, Hyderabad, Ahmedabad, Dharamshala, Delhi, Chennai, Lucknow, Pune, Bengaluru, Mumbai and Kolkata will host the tournament. The final match will take place at the Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad. Sports Desk, DD India.
The Indian star javelin thrower Neeraj Chopra is eyeing a gold medal at the World Championships in Budapest. Chopra progressed to the men's final after topping the qualifying round. He threw his season's best, 88.77 meters. DP Manu and Kishore Jaina are also in the hunt to claim medals. And the Indian 400 meter men's team, they ran a blistering 2 minutes 59.05 seconds run and qualified for the finals at the World Championship for the first time in history, rewriting also the Asian record, which was 2.59.51, and that was held by Japan. So now it's held by the Indian quartet of Mohammad Anas Yahya, Amoj Jacob, Mohammad Ajmal, Variya Thodi and Rajesh Ramesh. They ran this historic race to finish second in their heat behind the United States. The Indian women's blind cricket team have made history in Birmingham, winning a gold medal and defeating Australia in the rain-affected final of the International Blind Sports Federation World Games. The women in blue remained undefeated, having won all their league games in the tournament. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi congratulated the team, writing on the social media platform, "Kudos to the Indian women's blind cricket team for winning the gold at the IBSA World Games. a monumental achievement that exemplifies the indomitable spirit and talent of our sportswomen. India beams with pride, unquote. The Indian shuttler H.S. Pranoy has won the bronze medal at the BWF World Championships in Copenhagen. Pranoy started strong against Kunlavut Viditsan but lost to the world number 3. He lost 18-21, 21-13, 21-14, and this is the first medal for Pranoy at the World Championship and the 14th for India at this competition. And that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour. But let's know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us, Facebook, X, Instagram. They're all available to you. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Mark Lynn from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.